Welcome back. This is the last segment of Citizens Forum. I'd like to thank again our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. Our guest in this segment is Will Smith, and we're going to be talking about the general theme of consciousness. And you wanted as usual, which is a good theme. So you wanted to say something about the Mexican Supreme Court.
Yeah, I want to look at. I'm interested in what's happening with cannabis because I think it's a big deal as far as changing consciousness, and so the lens that I want to look through what we're seeing in the world with, especially in North America, which seems to be the battleground for cannabis. But we're seeing, a political struggle over it. But I'd like to, I mentioned briefly on the last show that I was in, that we can look at it as if the earth is a sentient being, and as if cannabis is also a sentient being, that there's some kind of intelligence behind that. And so it'll be interesting, instead of taking a side on the issue, just sort of filter it through that lens and see, is the earth, are we seeing something here that has an intelligence and a will outside of our own?
Well, I've long thought that the earth is a sentient being and lives, and certainly the plants too. Why not? I mean, how are they that much different from us?
Yeah, so the thing is, it might be, you might think of it as maybe this is kind of like part of the Earth's immune system. So I just wanted to bring up, I didn't read about it too much. I read just a short blurb that the Mexican Supreme Court has said that no one can take away your right to grow cannabis. And so that just sort of triggered an episode or a little anecdote in my life when I was living in Georgia, and I knew a fellow who took me out to after dinner. He invited me over to dinner one night, and he said, "Come on up in the forest, Will, and I want to show you something." So I followed him up there, and he said, when he got up, we walked for about half an hour, and he said, "This is my marijuana plant, Will. Now, I don't smoke marijuana. I've never smoked it. I have no intention of smoking it, but I grow one every year. And do you know why I grow it?" I had no idea. I didn't know him that well, but he said, "Because the government can't tell you can't grow a plant. That's just not their jurisdiction." So that is an interesting thing, because we're finding out that cannabis has a lot of medicinal properties and everything. So it'll just be interesting to see what happens in this regard, how quickly things change.
Well, to me it's amazing that after all these many, many years, this wonderful plant is still illegal in Canada. Fracking is legal, genetically contaminated foods are legal, Monsanto is legal, the Royal Bank making $2.5 billion in profit every 3 months is legal, but cannabis is illegal.
Yeah, and it was made illegal back in the 20s, and there was evidently, the article I read about that said there was no discussion in Parliament, even though it was in the pharmacopoeia at the time. So it's an interesting situation.
So why did you say it was in the pharmacopoeia?
It was used for medicine. So there was no argument why it should be taken away.
I just heard recently that George Washington, the first president of the United States, grew cannabis.
Yeah, he was definitely a recreational user. You can tell by his diaries.
So it became in somebody's interest to make this drug, this plant illegal, and the smoking of it illegal, and the taking of it illegal.
Yeah.
At huge cost to North American society and Central and South American society.
Everywhere in the world it's illegal, basically. Yeah. And tens of millions of people have died. I haven't even tried to count that, but it's a big deal.
And we created this massive gangster underworld, right, with all the money from this. And I don't think that happened by accident. I think that was the plan, because why else would you do these crazy things? Of course it should be legal. And all the other drugs as well. Even the former police chief of Seattle, I think, has that position. These are medical problems.
Well, anyway, I want to mention that let's take a look. And I want to go into one other thing. I found a new book on what I call Reality 2.0. I'm just holding it up. It's called Reality Transurfing. And a friend of mine, a Russian friend of mine, actually gave me this book. And I started reading it, and it's also, you can find it on YouTube. I'll put up the URL if I can find it, so you can just listen to it for free. But basically, this man has a different way of looking at the world, and I'd just like to bring out a couple of points. He uses the image or allegory of pendulums. And a pendulum is created by the energy of people who are thinking in the same direction. So you kind of get the idea that when people are thinking in the same direction, it's a pendulum. And a pendulum is an energy-based information structure. So it has two components, energy and information. And then the other, but those two things we can take pretty easily. But the thing that he says that if you actively do not want something, it will be in your life. And so, you know, we tend to think that if we want something, then we concentrate on it, and if we don't want something, then we concentrate on not having that. But this way of looking at the world says it's better for us to disengage from something that we don't want. So it would mean that our fighting in politics has very little effect, really. So I would recommend that if you want to get into this, this is a fairly easy book to read. It's based on some of the things that have been talked about in quantum physics, so it's pretty easy for our Western minds to access compared to some of the other stuff I've been reading. So what do you think about that?
Well, I liked the idea of the pendulum, and as people think in the same direction, the pendulum gains strength. To me, that almost seems like the hope of a way forward, because if we can start thinking about the good and positive directions that the country and the people can go in the building of a better society, and that idea actually works, then as we begin thinking more and more in that direction, we'll actually start moving in that direction. And to me, it means, you know, building better communities and better lives for people, happier, more fulfilling. I think people need community. We need less noise in our communities. We need more control of our communities, all of those things.
Yeah, there are lots of things. What he talks about is basically that we can have any of those things, but the way we approach getting them by trying to push atoms around and get into agreement is not effective. And if you look at the history of human civilization, you can kind of tell that. I mean, for all the things that we wish we could change, it hasn't changed much. So this is.
So what he's saying then is we should.
Well, we should back off and disengage and not be involved so much in fighting, but rather being more observers of, because we don't know how to look at reality. We see consensus reality, but we don't see the other possibilities. And so in each moment of time, there are always possibilities, and we tend to gloss over the possibilities because we all want to have a consensus, an agreement of what is reality. And instead, what we end up doing is creating a reality that's not real. It's a.
Can you give like an example of this, like in my life or your life, or just in our lives?
Well, if you just think about all the different things that you've been working for all of your life, and the amount of progress that's actually been made, it's very slight compared to what could be.
I'd say zero.
So what he's saying is we're at loggerheads and we're locked into this position, so we can't move.
Okay.
And the way that we move is to let go, and look at the situations a different way. So I can't explain it really easily. I mean, there are three of these books, and it's a different way of looking at things. But we do need to look at things differently, as we've spoken in the past about something that Buckminster Fuller pointed out. Our paradigm was changed 500 years ago when we discovered that the Earth is really a sphere, and not a flat place. But we still haven't incorporated that into our language. So as a matter of fact, we still, in our everyday life, our consciousness says the Earth is flat. That's how, because we say we jump up and down. We don't say we jump in and out. So what we're looking at here is a complete revamping of our consciousness and our way of looking at the world. We have a faulty way of looking at the world. We think that the laws of physics are true all the time, and they're not.
So, for me, let's say what I might push for is less environmental damage, or let's take better care of the planet, and we should all be in nature a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're right, progress has been slight or non-existent. So you're saying we should back off, disengage, and...
Well, yeah, in this one example, your intentions, and you're on this pendulum of the environment. And so there's some people over here that say, we've got to save the environment. If we don't do it, we're all going to die. And then there's some people that say, that's really just a bunch of nonsense. Technology is going to bail us out, or it really isn't as bad as you think it is, or they're just all sorts. But the point is that with these two groups of people fighting each other and at loggerheads, nothing is going to change. It's only going to change when we let go of that fight and then focus, all of us, on an intention of making things different. And it's just the nature of our system, of the way that we look at reality, because we separate ourselves from reality, and other cultures don't.
What does that mean, we separate ourselves from
Well,
reality?
we say we own the earth, and so we can do anything we want with it, even though it's killing us.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
other cultures
separate.
don't do that. Other cultures live in harmony with the earth, and you may not like the way they live, but surely we can come up with something that pleases us more than, running around with no clothes on or something. I don't know, whatever people's objections are to the way shamanic cultures live. I mean, they typically live with a lot less. But the truth is, we don't really understand their cultures, and we don't know how they think. I mean, we don't understand how they think.
And maybe we're going to find out a little more next time. Will, thank you very much.
Thank you again for having me on the show.
And thanks for watching this week's Citizens Forum. Goodbye.